Columbia. This is WIS News 10's Awareness.
Good morning, and thanks so much for making awareness a part of your day. I'm Brandy Cummings. On today's show, a Midlands church is taking on a big project in Kenya. Plus, we're talking about gangs in the Midlands. But first, budget cuts and DJJ. The South Carolina Department of Juvenile Justice, or DJJ, is a state agency, and by law, it's also a treatment and rehabilitative agency for the state's juveniles. Children usually enter the system in South Carolina when they're taken into custody by law enforcement or when a solicitor or a school refers them to DJJ. Now, based on the 2008-2009 fiscal year, 67% of the offenders who left the system were boys. 58% were black, and the average age, 16. The #1 charge associated with cases referred to DJJ statewide was disturbing schools. Now, here's some good news. 85% of those juveniles on probation or parole or in juvenile arbitration programs did not reoffend while under supervision. Now, as I mentioned, money for this agency has been cut, and time will only tell what the full impact of those cuts will mean. But to talk about some immediate effects, we welcome DJJ Director Judge Bill Byers. We also welcome Roscoe Wilson with the R.C. Wilson Group and Chandra Cleveland with Palmetto Protection Agency. Thank you all for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Judge Byers, first of all, we want to start with you. What are the actual amounts of these cuts?
The amount of the cuts that have occurred since July 1st, 2008, amounts to 27% of what was our budget at that time. The proposed cuts, as proposed by the Ways and Means Committee of the House thus far, would be an additional 17% when you count our reoccurring and our stimulus money. So that would get us to 43 to 44% within 2 years, within 24 months.
So that's nearly 50% of your budget that would be cut in 2 years.
If that were the final outcome, yes.
Yeah. What has been the immediate effect of the cut so far?
So far with the cuts, we had an employment program to help fight gangs. We've entirely closed that down. We had teen after-school centers for kids who were beginning to get in trouble in communities that could go there. We initially closed 40 of them. We've been able to reopen 20. We have closed a wilderness camp. I've closed 3 dorms on our hardware secure campus. And we have laid off thus far 285 people the first year, and we've cut another 50 positions this year, so we are up well above 300 people or employees that we've had to let go.
Yeah, a lot of different things you're talking about being cut there. One of those things I heard you say were the wilderness camps, and Roscoe, you're very familiar with that. Talk about the effect of cutting those camps and the effects that'll have on the children.
Well, you're talking about 6 wilderness camps that average about 32 kids each. These young people are treated in the community without fences, without the cost of the fence, the staffing, the ratios, and these young people are treated in a way that it's more family oriented. So they're in their communities, they have more contact. So if our programs, which is just about maybe 10% of what their budget is, are cut, then these kids have to go in the community untreated or with a lack of adequate treatment, or back into institutions where it's going to cost 3 times more to treat them there than it would be in a community.
Judge Byers, let's talk about a little bit about the boy-girl ratio when we talk about these children, because those statistics of the students that leave the program, that high percentage of boys, but what is the percentage of girls versus boys in the DJJ program?
Well, it depends on the program you're talking about. If you're talking about our program that has to do with misbehavior in school, truancy, disturbing schools, and things like that, it's probably almost 50-50, 60% boys, maybe 40% girls, close to 50-50. If you're talking about those that are put into wilderness camps or put behind the razor wire, it's probably 90-10, 90% boys, 10% girls. At this time. And
Chandra, you work a lot with girls with your nonprofit agency. Talk about what you see with dealing with these young women. We hear the statistics, but we don't often think, I think sometimes, that females are involved at the rate they are, but there's actually been an increase, right?
Indeed. With Ladies On With Knowledge, we're noticing a lot of parents calling today because they can't get into those programs that are offered by the state and by the wilderness camp. So they're calling saying, what can we do? My daughter is uncontrollable. She's doing these things. She's breaking and she's robbing people and fighting every day. And so I try to take those girls in, show them a better way, equip them with the knowledge that they're so-called using in the street that would be adequate for them to survive in life. I know I can't take them out of that environment, but I'm a part of mentoring them and finding them a mentor within the community to help them to stay out of that environment.
And I have to pose this question to all of you. Why do you all think so many of our children are becoming part of DJJ and getting involved in so many of these issues and crimes and things like that?
Well, you know, just like you talked about, Judge Byers, one of the statistics were that, you know, school disturbances. I mean, a lot of times kids are getting sent to DJJ for things that can be handled at the school, and obviously I don't want to throw anything at the school in the school's lap, but kids, part of school education is not just fluorescent lights and desk. There is also interaction. So I know, and teachers have a tough job doing that, but kids need to be empowered. You know, you have to work with kids by being involved with them, not detached from them. And so if we as a community can do as Ms. Cleveland's doing and work with these young ladies or young men and involve the human impact of working with kids, I think you get more out of them. A lot of times kids are just not empowered. We're always telling kids what they can't do, they can't go here, they can't do this. Let's tell them what they can do. That's the way I say it. I look at it from a human-to-human perspective.
And it's just like the law enforcement segment of it. You know, everybody wants law enforcement to patrolling, watching minor things when it could be a community involvement. We all can get involved, become a mentor, or if your child has a friend, take that friend under your wings and try to be a supervisor to them, whether it's a lack of a male in the home or whether it's just a lack of someone encouraging them and taking them to see different things in life than what they are used to being exposed to.
Judge Byers, how do we keep these kids out of the system?
Well, it's the community involvement. So many of these kids live in neighborhoods that are dangerous. Most of the boys, the most unusual family structure that I have with my children, because I consider these my children, is a two-parent family. That's 12%.
Wow.
And a third of the children that I get do not live with mama or daddy. They don't have anybody. And the girls, it's a strange thing. We don't have a lot of girls in our lockup system, but those that we have, more than half of them have been sexually abused. And there are many girls who don't want to leave us because living in a juvenile prison is the safest that they have ever been. And that gives you an idea of what their life is like. Their neighborhoods are not safe. Many of these kids will join a gang because they want protection from other kids.
Wow. What's going to happen if you have these additional cuts, or if DJJ has these additional cuts?
Well, the cuts as are proposed now would end up costing a total of, in South Carolina, 285.2 jobs. The .2 being a fraction of some people that we support. About 104 of those would be state employees. Another 191 would be contract people, many of them in the camps. It would require us, we have 11 camps that we can put kids in that are very successful. We've had them since the mid-90s with the reforms that went on then. We would have to close 6 of those camps. I would literally end up with more children than I have beds. I would have several hundred more children than I would have beds to put them in. That becomes an impossible situation. You know, there are minimum conditions of confinement that must be met for juveniles. They got to go to school 12 months a year. If they got medication, they got to have it. You got to protect them. You got to protect them from each other, and you got to treat them. And the most expensive way to treat them is put them into a hardware secure facility like on Broad River Road. One of the best things to do is to treat them in the community, which is very cheap, or to treat them in the wilderness camp. But as the cuts come, I can't move any more kids out into the wilderness camp because the ones that are locked up need to be locked up. What I would have to do is bring more kids on the inside, but I don't have the beds to bring them on the inside.
Wow, wow.
And so I'm in a catch-22. I've got to meet the standards, but I won't have the beds, nor the money to be able to meet the standards.
All right, some startling information there that you just revealed. You know, coming up, everybody, we're going to still have our panelists here. You know, DJJ was working on a program to deal with gangs, but of course money got cut for that, so that program was cut. But we're going to tell you more about that program and take a look at a recent show that revealed some startling information. You need to see this. Stay with us, everybody.